Hughes Road. 3 of these helicopters flew out of Whiteman Airport in Pacoima along with News Chopper 4. I'm hearing on the scanner they called for 2 additional tankers. I'm going to zoom back wide and show you what we are seeing out the helicopter window. This is massive, and this is growing before our eyes. This is not like that small brush fire that we covered yesterday or the one before that. This is something to be concerned about.
Well, folks, LA is on fire again. And I know what you're wondering. Whatever happened to the last fires? I mean, it was all anyone was talking about for days on end, and then all of a sudden, radio silence. All of a sudden, we heard nothing more about the fires. Now, if you live in LA, I'm sure that's different. But I'm talking about the people in the rest of America. It's like the fires were dominating the headlines. And of course, they were blaming global warming and all of that nonsense. And then bam, it started getting exposed that arsonists were starting the fires. That the fires weren't started by climate change. No, there were illegal immigrants as well as others out there sparking the flames, causing the fires. And once all of that started getting exposed and people started digging deeper into the fires and some of the areas that were burning down, out of nowhere, it was like, okay, we don't want y'all to care about this anymore. We wanted all of your attention and all of your sympathy, but now that you're asking real questions and you're actually figuring out the causes of these fires, now that you're digging in and realizing how much the people of California were failed by their elected officials, well, I think it's better that we don't talk about this anymore. Because we're making ourselves look bad. We're making the media look bad. We're making a certain political party look bad. We're making Karen Bass look bad. We're making the DEI higher fire chief look bad. We're making Gavin Newsom look bad. So instead of talking about the worst fires you've seen in your lifetime, instead of covering the destruction, let's just not talk about it anymore. Well, I guess that didn't work out too well, because now here we are and LA is on fire again. And the sad part about this is when the fires started, when the last fire started, that should have been the warning. Hey, go into these areas, get rid of the dry bush, get rid of the dry shrubbery, water down some of these areas, make sure they're not too dry. But those precautions were still not taken. All of LA doesn't have to catch on fire. If there's a fire over here, then go ahead and go over here and take the necessary precautions to ensure that this area doesn't catch on fire. But no, none of that was done. So now we have a brand new fire. And once again, we're going to see them scrub and repeat. They hope that because of the inauguration, the events of the past couple of days, that you forgot about the old LA fires from last week, right? So they're going to try to implement the same narrative, the global warming, climate change nonsense, when we all know there are people around LA starting these fires. It's blatantly obvious at this point. But they're going to rinse and repeat. And I'm already seeing it. But right now, this fire is spreading rapidly. Over 5,000 acres, 0% contained. The evacuation orders are coming in. And, I mean, it's heartbreaking to see what people have to go through. Knowing, like, natural disasters and stuff, they're always horrible. As someone who lives in the South, and I experience hurricane season every year, trust me, I know how it is. But in many of those situations with the hurricanes, it's like people feel helpless. These fires in many ways could be prevented, and they're not being prevented. And even after the last fires that we were dealing with, they still didn't do anything to ensure that this wouldn't happen again, and now it's already happening again. So you really got to start scratching your head and wondering how much of this is incompetence and how much of this is, oh, you want these areas to burn to the ground so you can make 15-minute cities. Because if anyone would do something like that, it would be the people in California. But I want to go ahead and roll a little news clip. Let's see a little bit more about what's going on here. Then I'll be right back with more.
And I'm looking behind you at, I'm flashing back to Palisades when it was such a fiasco of people trying to drive out of there. It didn't seem like there was much traffic control. This seems to be remarkably different.
Yes, and we can see the sheriff's deputies here are telling people when to go, when they need to stay. It's very orderly. And you're talking about, Philip, flashbacks to the Palisades. I mean, there are those homes back there in the distance. I mean, this fire, it may not be threatening them right now, but still, it could be very understandably so too close for comfort for both the homeowners as well as the first responders who need to decide should we or should we not issue evacuation warnings and orders. So we can still see some more fire crews coming and going from here. We've just seen a whole line of first responders coming here, not just from fire, but also sheriff's deputies for traffic control and to help enforce these evacuation orders. I was hearing you talk about some ramp closures on I-5. I can tell you on I-5 right around here, it's very slow going. It's very bumper to bumper as people just kind of stop and look at that massive dark plume of smoke right there in the distance. I mean, after what SoCal has been through these past few weeks, it is just an awful sight to see that again. I mean, we know they are tackling this from the air. We can hear and see the helicopters coming overhead. But still, I actually have to say, it looks like that smoke over there is a little bit darker now than we arrived here a few minutes ago. So just more signs that fresh brush is burning here. And we know, Giovanna and Philip, that it's very dry brush.
Look, I'm going to be completely honest here, and I'm not trying to be mean because I do feel terrible for the people who are losing their homes in the paths of these fires. I do feel terrible for everyone, regardless of their situation. But I don't know. I feel like I learned my lesson from the last fires because I feel like a lot of people put effort into covering, those news stories, getting the news out there. Being really sympathetic towards the people who were involved and affected. And then it's like as soon as the flames died down a little bit, a lot of the people in California, not all, but a lot of them got on social media and got really preachy. It's like their houses had burned down, they lost everything, and their first reaction was to get on Twitter or X and tell people that they're stupid for not believing in climate change. Or they were blaming Donald Trump, who wasn't even in office. Literally making excuses for Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, two of the people largely responsible for the fires. So, I don't know. It's like part of me is like, I don't know, I kind of learned my lesson when it comes to this. Yeah, I feel bad, but I'm approaching with caution because, no pun intended, I feel like I've already been burned when it comes to these fires in LA. Because the last thing I want to do is spend my entire day covering these stories just to get online and see the people of LA taking a huge shit on people like me and people like you all watching these videos who are exposing the actual problems in LA. But no, literally, these people are losing their homes and then covering up for the people responsible because they refuse to accept reality. Which should be expected from a lot of the people who live there. Not all, of course, but a lot of them are, you know the type of people I'm talking about. But yeah, I just don't want to get burned again when it comes to this. And also, it's like, if I was someone in charge of like having to give out resources and help, I'm going to help the people who are affected by disasters that they had no control over first, before I help the people who are voting for their own destruction constantly. And I thought that this would serve as a huge wake-up call, but I don't think it did. For some, I think it did, but for the majority, they're right back to their same old ways. And a lot of the famous and rich people who lost their homes in these fires, they're all over online looking for sympathy. One thing I saw was like actors, singers, musicians worth millions of dollars were setting up GoFundMes for people to send them money. And I felt kind of weird about that as well. And part of me questions, like, how many of you all, like, don't even care that your house burned down? Because when it comes down to it, you're going to be right there pushing for the 15-minute cities and all of these other whacked out, super left, like far left nonsense that these people push, man. I'm telling you right now, some of the same celebrities whose houses burned down are going to be the same ones telling people that they should be comfortable, you know, living in their 15-minute cities and not being able to go anywhere, stay in your pods and eat bugs. I'm just really tired of all of that nonsense. And then, of course, I think the question is, on a lot of people's minds is, you know, a lot of these homes and stuff that belong to a lot of these rich and powerful people who have been accused of doing horrible things to kids, it's like a lot of their properties burnt down right in the midst of everything getting exposed with Diddy. And I don't know. I think a lot of people feel weird about it. I don't think that's really connected, you know, personally, but I understand why people feel that way and are exploring that avenue as well. But right now, hey, here we are. LA's on fire again. Who would have saw this coming? It's not like they weren't just on fire last week. Meanwhile, I am living in a winter wonderland here in freaking Florida. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. People are outside building snowmen on the beach. It's crazy stuff. But for now, let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.